Broadcast. Apologies coming in a bit late, but all the same, we're here to have that candid discussion. And remember, as I said earlier on, we'll be discussing the fate of the boy child. In the recent past, we've witnessed what has been happening, especially in regards to the heinous acts that have been conducted by our very own boys. Yes, the recent case that is ongoing is under investigations, but at least from what we have established or has been established so far is that this is an act that was conducted by a very young boy that is in Kiamba, and we also have witnessed what happened yesterday in Kisii school, where one boy also proceeded to stab his own teachers. And we just sit down to ask ourselves what really could be informing this, what could be the underlying factor that has pushed this pressure to our young tucks. Yes, in most cases we've said it is important that we focus on the welfare of the girl child, but also we've had debates and we've had complaints that as we focus on the girl child, we tend to overlook the needs, the importances of taking care of our very own boy child. So today, we'll have specialists in regards to matters, relationships, and, social life, and they will guide us through, they will take us through. They are parents. They probably are going to give us tips on just how best we can be present as parents for our very own young tucks. And, well, while we could be having a conversation that focuses more on looking at the needs of the boy child, we also do not forget about the girl child. So generally, our teenagers, our young tucks is what we'll have as a conversation this morning. And the guests that I have this morning are, household names, or so to speak. They were supposed to be here, but thanks to the traffic, they did not make it. But again, thanks to technology, we're still able to connect to them. Dr. Julius and Dr. Kimani, relationship experts, will be joining us from wherever it is that they are, somewhere in Thika Road. Thika Road is not a joke. Earlier on in the morning, it wasn't badly off, but we said if you want to rush somewhere, make it fast. But again, they probably overlooked what it is that I say. So, karibu sana. It's good to have you this morning, Dr. Julius and Dr. Jane.
Thank you. How are you, Linda?
I'm good. Thank you for finding time for us and also parking somewhere just to speak to us.
Yeah, and we are sorry. I think we didn't listen to you, but you had left early.
Yeah.
But there was an accident along the road.
Oh, all right. I hope that has been fixed. But
it has been fixed at our own expense.
Oh, thank you. Now, all the same, we're here. And we get to the conversation. I guess this conversation has been triggered by what we've witnessed in the recent past and the heinous acts that have been conducted by our very own young tucks and the numerous cases of, teenage pregnancies. Some of them are highly attributed to, again, our youthful, boys. And we get to ask ourselves just what is wrong. Have we failed in matters parenting, or what exactly is informing this? And I'll allow you as experts to probably drive this conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. And I think this is a good time to be speaking about this. But one thing I want to say is that there are a lot of issues that are driving our young people, like what we have seen happening.
Yeah.
There's quite a number of issues. There are issues parenting, there are issues schooling, there are issues we can talk about even the social aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, a child is not raised by just one person, but also by a society. So there are a lot of factors that are playing into the whole thing. Because when you listen to this young man, what drove him to do that act is he says it's a movie. So when we go back at the end of the day, we look at the raising up of our children. So parenting plays a major role. And I think one thing that we are not sure is that, or especially on how to raise our own boys.
Yeah.
There are so many dynamics that play when it comes to raising our children. So I would say parenting is the key foundation of what any child turns up to be. But I would say at the same time, there has been so much attention being paid to the girl child that the boy has been neglected. When we look at the reality of issues, even from schools, it seems like a boy can survive on his own.
Yeah.
And unlike a plant where you can throw a plant in the garden and you leave it and it grows, or an animal, a child cannot be able to grow on its own without guidance. And I think the boy child has been in one way or another being neglected, and we assume that he's okay.
All right, so
And
much.
that's challenges.
So much that you have mentioned, and I think I'll base this conversation on technically the key points that you have mentioned. One, that aspect of society. And Dr. Jenny will agree with me that times have indeed changed. Look at what was there during our times. Look at what was there during your times in terms of how active this society was in raising up of children. Today is a whole different affair. I can tell you for free that if my son is doing something crafty somewhere on the road, there's probably nobody who would raise their finger, who would point at them, who would stop them from doing this. Why is it that society has chosen to be absent?
I think it's also because of our mode of accepting change.
Yeah.
Many people have come to a point where they feel I'm too independent, and we are adopting a culture that's not African at all. Where we say, you talk to my child, I'll even sue you. And we've had a lot of teachers complaining that at times they discipline children and the parents come in too strong. And so we broke the communal society. We broke the communal society because at our times, we were raised by everybody. Actually, even a stranger would find you along the road and ask you, what are you doing? Where are you going? Can you run home? And you'd run, you'd obey. Today, just try that at home. You'll be surprised. The boy look at you, and perhaps if you're very safe, he'll not talk back. Otherwise, he may give you a piece of his mind. So I totally tend to believe it's also about parents. We need to make our children understand that they belong to the community. They belong to a society. They belong to a people who love them and care. And we also need to equip them with a skill to understand between good and bad people, right and wrong intentions, so that they're able also to learn from us, learn from somebody else. And for parents also to be open enough to understand that if I correct your child, or if you correct my child, it's not out of hate. It's out of being our brother's keeper. So I think we need to have back what we used to call our brother's keeper.
And true to it, if you listen to some of the statements coming from the stories that we've witnessed, teachers will say that he's a naughty boy. Neighbors will say that he rarely, had time to go and eat at home. He would come and eat at the kiosk. He used to do this. He used to be a calm boy. And, amid all this, sometimes there are a lot of strong signals that one would pick and say something is amiss. But you realize that actually nobody tends to pick this, maybe out of ignorance or maybe out of just saying that, that is none of my business. But even as we fault the parents, Dr. Julius, you would probably agree that there are instances when indeed the parents have put their best foot forward in terms of raising these kids, but it just turns out to be bad. What is this one thing that we do not do right? Do we petty these kids so much so that we tend to look at just the outward aspect of things as opposed to delving deep?
You see, well, even the good book says that a child will, even a small child will be known by the deeds. You will see rebellion by even looking at a small child, and you can be able to tell what that child will become. The thing is, we need to come to a place, because some of the things that have happened cannot be changed, but we need to come to a place where we need to do intentional parenting. And I always use the mechanical things that we have. If a car is breaking down, I'm very sure every man or any woman will be able to say, I can feel something is happening to this car. Yeah. It is breaking down. But unfortunately, we are not keen enough to be able to listen to what is happening. Even the society as well is not keen to listen to what is happening. And I think it is a high time that we paid attention to our children. Let us want to know what is happening day by day. Because let me tell you something. If probably you are to look at some of these young men who are reacting very angrily to the society, they may have tried to say something, but nobody was listening to them. Okay. You may hear one of them saying, now newa shule, but because the parent will come and push them back to school and tell them go back to school when you shule utaki, because of failing to listen, these young men end up doing some crazy things. So my advice would be, yes, parents, we are trying, but we need to try more. because the challenges are becoming bigger and bigger, and we cannot just look at things the way they are. Just like the way now we are using technology and embracing technology, we also need to embrace changes that are happening in parenting world.
All right, yes. And Dr. Jane, the challenges that the boy child have gone through or are facing today, well, are some of the key things that have also been attributed with the fact that, you know, there's been so much attention. Also, Pastor Julius has attested to that, you know what, many have argued that the girl child has been left for the longest of time. And so almost all the attention has been shifted to this direction where, you know, we deal with the issues of the girl child. At some point in time, the success of the girl child has been looked at as an undoing to the boy child. Most of the time, the boy child have been viewed as enemies of girls' progress. Well, while we could say that it's a good thing to empower the girl child, and, you know, we would want to come in defense of that, do you suppose that we're getting it wrong in this quest?
No. I think at times we are pushing this conversation about empowering the girl child a bit too far, and we keep saying they were empowered at the expense of the boy child, and that is a conversation around the world actually. But I look at the steps and the years that the boy child had been empowered, many years ahead. For our great-grandparents or grandparents, they couldn't go to school, they couldn't get empowered, but their sons were empowered. And today, they became, you know, men of repute, while the women were housewives. So I think it's the boy child that stagnated at a certain point. It is not that there was anything wrong about educating or perhaps even paying attention on the girl child. It's just that the boy child stagnated at a certain point, and what was given to them, they didn't multiply it to the coming generation. So I think that's where the issue is. However, I totally agree that when a plant is not growing the way you expected it to grow, you go back and pour fertilizer and you water it and you begin to tender it again. And that's what we need to do to the boy child. We need to start tendering him once again. And we need to give him attention, and we need him to mature emotionally, because as African parents, we never allow our boys to mature emotionally. We are very, very hard on the boys. And that's why they carry a lot of anger, a lot of pent-up issues, a lot of emotions, and they're not able to express because we taught them as a man, as a boy, you don't cry, you don't show emotions, you don't even react like that. That is for girls. And so the things we are seeing is just pent-up emotions that have been vented out. And sorry to say that is just a vent. It's the wrong way, however.
All right. And when we look at all this, it sounds or it appears as though it's more of a blame game. Maybe just to pick what it is that Dr. Julius spoke about and, you know, relate it to what it is that you said, especially in that aspect of empowering the girl child and overlooking what would be in terms of empowering the boy child. But that aspect of stagnation is one maybe that we'd want to pick out and, you know, focus on some more. And coming to you, Dr. Julius, do you suppose that we have focused much also on the blame game aspect, that we tend not to address the actual problem?
I would tend to agree on that, Linda. I would say there has been a lot of throwing this way and throwing that way, saying the boy child, the guy child. But I think we are not taking some affirmative action. We are not saying, yes, now this boy child is going down the drain. What do we need to do? We need to, one, and I would say this, we would need to look for serious mentors for our boys. Now, unfortunately, if you look at the boy world or the man's world, success is usually measured by how many cars one has, how many houses one has, probably the women around them. It's all about power, women, and money. Now, unfortunately, what's happening, you find the people who are driving the big cars, the people who seem to be making it, in quotes, are sometimes the people who do not have the moral capacity to be able to address the boy child. So the person who has the morals does not look as successful as the person who does not have morals. So at the end of the day, they are looking at mentors who are not directing in the right path. Probably in the estate, the guy who has the money is a drug dealer. That is a guy who looks like to be making it.
Yeah.
And now that becomes the mentor. So we need to, number one, take a very major steps towards looking for genuine mentors and reteaching our boys on the what real success means. Because success is not about cars and houses and women. It's much more than that. It is the good name that you live on this earth. And I think that needs to start there. Just showing them the right way and through the right people.
Is there a generational gap, Dr. Jen, then, when we talk about showing them the right way? I mean, we are talking about the digital world. We're talking about, the upbringing of the 21st century, which probably most of the parents have not been able to touch base with. So how then do we get them understanding that, this is a different generation? While we want to instill the values that were there back then, we also need to be alive to the facts that are ongoing in the current generation.
I think the first thing about us as parents is that we need to be a bit modern. We need to understand what's happening. We need also to understand exactly the challenges that these people are going through. Some years back when the WhatsApp, the Facebook came around, most of them used to say, my mom does not understand, my dad does not understand, and we'd all accept we don't understand. One thing as parents we need to learn. We need to equip ourselves. Yeah. That's what we call intentional parenting. We need to sit back and say, what is happening with the boys? If you've got boys, what is happening with girls? If you're a mother of girls, you need to equip yourself. You need to be current. And then you need to become, number one, their friend. I keep saying, as a parent, first of all, fight to be a friend. Be a disciplinarian, yes, but be a friend. A friend is somebody who your child can come and confide in and tell this is what is happening and it has brought me to this challenge. A friend is somebody who they'll know I'll talk to and I'll not feel condemned. I'll not feel judged, but I'm going to feel directed and I'm going to feel led and guided. However, today's parents, yes, the gap comes in because we're all on social media. The hours and the times that we should be talking to our children, we are present but not available. We are not available for their conversation. I'm also on WhatsApp, you're on this, the other one is on that. So you can say, create time for my children. Yeah, you do. But are you actually available for them to talk to? Are you available for their friendship? Are you available to be their mentor? Because you need to be their number one mentor. So when we get back to that, because in our days, we had our aunties, we had somebody somewhere who'd constantly come and talk to you.
Today we do not have that, yes. All right.
Yeah, we don't anymore.
Okay, and just to probably have an overview of what exactly could be some of the troubles or the challenges that the boy child could be facing, and some of what we would consider as remedies or opportunities or ways of addressing some of these. I know we've had this conversation before and probably would have started by pinpointing some of these, but as of today, in the 21st century parenting, or better yet, in parenting generally, or the digital parenting, what are some of the key things that you feel as a parent could be a there could be a disconnect that exists between the parents and the boy child, for that matter, Dr. Julius?
No, I would say one thing, as today we are doing a conversation via technology, and we had to adapt to that technology. The same thing, as parents, you need to come to a place, you need to get to the world of these young men and women. You need to find out what is happening in the social world, in the music world, because music is a big driver of how some of these young men and women are behaving. You need to understand what is happening in the movies world, because that is something else that is driving what is happening in these people. And so instead of first condemning everything, we sometimes as parents are so much used with the things of saying, don't do this, don't do that, don't go with this person, don't visit this person. Now we have so many don'ts, and we need to understand what is driving these young men to think in a certain way. And how does that happen? We can only do so when we first become friends. Study them. We need now to study our children. We need to study their environment, and we should not get tired, because at the end of the day, if we get tired, then the consequences will be too much. They will be too heavy.
Yeah.
We need to look at the lives of these young men and women and realize, if we don't take charge now, if we don't get into their world now, then tomorrow we may get into their world when it is too late and when it is too costly. So get into the world of these boys.
How do we get to reverse this? Because reality, again, I agree, is that we always get into their world when it's a little bit too late, and we probably might not be able to salvage anything based on what we have seen. Dr. Jane, how do we reverse the damages that we already have? How do we reverse this conversation from that one of pointing fingers or blaming, the fact that girl child empowerment has been there for the longest of time and is what is being considered as important, to that angle where, again, we'll start instilling this confidence, we'll start instilling these values, we'll start reminding that the boy child that they are considered as important as they are?
Yeah, I think the first place begins with us. We, number one, have got to accept. We number one need to accept that, yes, this boy could be perhaps in high school, perhaps already in college. I missed out a lot of time with this child, but it's never too late. At that point at which you are, begin to look for a connection. Work towards a connection. Begin to understand, who has my son become? Who is this boy? What does he like? And we keep telling parents, and this works, take your son out one day for lunch. Have a lunch outing. Have a conversation. Let it not be about you. Let it be about him. Number two, we need to work together as a team with every organization that is a spiritual organization, whether it is for those who go to churches, for those who go to mosques, for those who go to whichever area of worship. I want to at least challenge every spiritual leader to take also the same role and begin to take keen interest on the boys that come to their places of worship, because that's also a place that you can have a big catchment. Another area is the teachers.
Yes.
The teachers play a very, very big role. And for the longest time possible, the teachers also gave up. And they say, this one does not behave well. This one is not brought up well. This one is rude. This one is aggressive. Let's move from that judgment as teachers. And let's begin to take these children as our own children, where we can say, what value can I add? And I'll come back to both parents. The parents also need to create time to go talk to the teachers. We have children, we have teenagers. I think one is post-teenage. And one thing we constantly used to do was to go and talk to their teacher. Right from primary. How is so-and-so behaving? And okay, they are okay children. But the children knew, were present and were a team together with their teachers. Parents need to do teamwork with teachers. Another mistake parents do, and that's why at times teachers are not too empowered. They criticize the teachers in the presence of the children. And they say, no, teacher so-and-so, anakuonea sana. When you tell a child anakuonea, you've denied that teacher the moral authority to talk to that child and for the child to receive the correction. So I believe it revolves around the three institutions. It revolves around the institution of the religious organization, the school, and the parents. If we all team up, we'll make a better generation and we'll be able to bridge up the gap that we lost.
We have a message from Maria, and she says, while we might have that argument of creating a time, for these kids, probably find time to go out with them, reality is that as career parents, we barely have time for lunch dates. We are busy looking for the coin, which is very instrumental too in raising up of these kids. Dr. Julius.
Now, I will say this, and yes, it is true that there are people who have become career people, but you cannot say that you have no time. You can't say that. Now, if you're saying you have no time, then get ready to be faced by some of the challenges that you are beginning to see today now. having boys who are behaving in ways that will even break your heart. So if you keep on saying career, get ready also to spend some of your money probably in some rehab somewhere. So the thing is, even if you come at midnight, and I know you could be tired, you know, time is not about 50 hours or 10 hours. It could be even 30 minutes with that young person, and just having that conversation, knowing that they can feel that you care for them, that will change everything. So let us remove this narrative of that we are too busy looking for money. You can create time. I'm very sure I have gone to restaurants where you'll find guys who are very busy career people, and they have time to be with their friends, even if it's for 1 hour. So let us not equate time to a day. It can even be 30 minutes, it can be 1 hour, it can be 2 hours, but those 2 hours make them quality time that will change everything. And again, as parents, we need also not to keep on blaming. Don't feel like you have lost everything, because there's that notion of where a parent is feeling like I've lost my time, I may not be able to recover. There is always a time you can begin somewhere. So this is a time to begin. Someone said the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the best other time is now. So if you are looking at that child and you're saying he's going haywire, just begin by looking at an opportunity where you can be that opportunity. Don't give up.
Okay. Well, the approach to make corrections, we've said it's good to make a friendship, it's good to be a friend to this young kid, or it's good to probably just get time to understand them more. But reality is that there's always that temptation of getting a bit radical, especially with the boy child. You tend to feel like, you know what, if you are taking the soft approach, it might not work. What is the worst that can happen? Or what is the goodness of taking a radical approach in lining or shaping the life of this boy?
I'll say this one thing, and I think that that's a mistake that we've borrowed from our parents. I believe there is a stage at which perhaps you can become a bit radical with these children, but at a certain stage, only conversation can help. Because there's a stage where there is nothing you can tell them to change them unless they internalize the reason. And one thing we tell parents is this: the first thing you need to do is make him understand, why do you need to make these changes? There is need for a conversation with this boy, because boys are both analytical, and they're very critical analysts in what you tell them. They're very, very analytical. So when you tell him, you know what, this is the way, he will listen to it. And if it makes sense to him, by the way, they absorb it. The thing we do with girls is different from boys. Girls react from emotions, but boys will react from what you've told me. Does it make sense? What you've told me, does it add value to my life? And I think when you keep saying it over and over and over, and I tell parents, when you feel like you really want to get radical, add in some love. Now, when mistakes are done, and there is need for perhaps a disciplinary action, for boys, it works very well when you begin to withdraw their rights. Because some of them have known parents. Some of them come to us for counseling. And they say, you know, I know my mom. Ataongea, I switch off, akimaliza, I'll ask for supper and go home. And go to sleep. So I think we need to change our approach as parents. We need to realize this has not worked. You know, if I've done something before and it didn't work and it didn't give me a result, I can't keep doing it and expect a result. I need now to sit back and ask myself, how do I approach this young man and understand every day they're growing up, and give them time to talk. As parents, we talk to the children. Boys get tired of hearing you talk throughout. Give them a moment to also talk. They've got something to say, and they're not very eloquent in their conversation. And as parents, we even want to conclude their sentences. Give them a chance to speak. What they say may be so important, it may help you understand exactly who your son has become, or the area in life that he needs help. So I keep saying, give him an opportunity to talk. Don't always do the talking.
All right. Well, let's take it a notch higher. as they say, men are boys and men will always be boys. And maybe when we talk about the boy child, we certainly do not just mean those young ones. We probably take this to a higher level. And we've seen cases of gender-based violence. And in most cases, when we talk about this, we just think about the girl child. We just think that the girl child is the only vulnerable to this, but we tend to overlook this. How do we get to speak about these ills that are happening within, that in most cases you find that all the blames will be laid squarely on the boy child? And when we speak about this, Dr. Julius, let's also focus on the laws and the gaps that exist therein, the policies that speak about the rights of the boy child, the rights of, the men out there. Do you suppose that we are in touch with what is exactly on ground? And do you also suppose that on the other hand, you find that they have too much rights that empower them, that, it limits the guardians to go an extra mile in instilling the values?
Now, one thing I'll say, I think from the time immemorial, it has been assumed that if anything happens wrong in the home, the man must be the culprit.
Yeah.
And I think that narrative needs to change, because we need to look deeper, because there's so many men that are going through abuse, and they may not be able to say it because men are created in a competitive way, and it is very hard for them to come out and show a weakness. So they tend to hide what is happening. But I think one thing that needs to be so open, and I think we can start even from our education sector. Yeah. There is something that was removed. Any man, even look at our roads, men live for competition. They enjoy competition. They thrive in that place. Anywhere there is competition, they will go. If there is a game to be played, they would want to participate or support the team that is probably winning. And now, one of the things that happened in the education sector, we will do something without considering the boy child that was driving them forward. And from that time, you can be able to see there were changes, and even there is no morale in the young men. Yeah. They removed the issue of ranking. Yes, there could have been some negatives about ranking, but if you looked at any school where there was a boy, they would work so hard because they knew at the end of the day they want to be at the top. Now, the moment that was removed, they have to start looking for areas or niches where there is competition. Now, where is there competition now? You find probably it is in crime. So the guy who gets maybe the biggest amount or escapes from the police or something like that gets the biggest rush of adrenaline and probably the respect from their peers. So we need to look back and see how can we nurture the competition in men without necessarily destroying or discouraging the women. Now, the other part is also the laws, because if today a man is in a room and a woman with a woman, and suddenly a woman rushes out and says, this man wanted to rape me, everybody would believe the woman, even if it was like the Joseph story in the Bible.
Yes.
So the thing is, we also need to have a culture and a society that will listen to the end and look things into the details instead of just pointing a blame at any man. Okay. So those are some of the areas I think then there's a need for improvement. We may not be able to do it in one day, but I think we need to take small steps towards making sure that these things happen.
Okay, and as we get to a close, that should be on our last, questions or so. There's this thing that you have mentioned, Dr. Julius, and I'll pose this question to Dr. Jean. We, in most cases, speak of how we get to empower these boys at the expense of the girl child, in the sense that, you've heard Dr. Julius say that, we need to find ways of empowering them in ways that will not feel will not make the girl child feel as though they do not have the privileges, as though they are not being destroyed. But reality is that sometimes we've done the same things that seek to empower this boy child, but then this becomes their greatest undoing. For instance, you'd probably tell them that, yes, men do not cry, but then you realize that, well, in their quest of trying not to cry, they crack. There are times we've told them that, men are strong, men should be winners and all out there. So when they tend to be on the losing end, because life is all about losing and winning, then they tend to feel like they're weak. They tend to feel like they're finished. How then do we have also this conversation, empower them, but do not overdo it to a point whereby if it does not happen according to their expectation, it breaks them?
Yeah, thank you. I think we need to be realistic. We need to understand the abilities, the capabilities, and the potential of your individual child.
Yeah.
And that's why it cannot be a blanket. It has to be individual. And that's where parenting comes in. That's why I tell parents, create time with your child to know them and understand them. When you understand the potential, the parents will insist, perhaps from class 1 and class 2, a brother and a sister, the brother will be scolded because the sister performed better. And as we all wish that they were A students, they may not be. But there's a different potential in that boy that if it is harnessed, it can do great things. So I keep telling people, understand one thing about every young man you see around. He may not be an A student, but given an opportunity, he could do very well in a different area. He may not be the best in sports because we want them to be number 1. We want to go for sports day and say, my child got the trophy. He may not be that one, but he may be very good in drama. It starts from earlier on and it develops up to forever. And, you know, children, especially boys from age 2, age 3, begin to show signs of who they are. They begin to show signs of their interest. There are times you'll find perhaps a boy with a plate and sufuria and he's eating them like drums. Our son used to eat anything like a keyboard. Since he was very, very small, and he used to be gravitated towards a keyboard in church. Today he's doing music. We nurtured music in him. He's in campus doing music. That is his area of strength. But the sister is different. She's a scientist. So I need to understand my children individually and never compare. Because when you compare boys, you kill them on the inside. Never compare your children. Never let the boys feel like, you know, and most parents who were fond of saying, you know, you're the boy. You should be the one leading the way. And you see now you are letting me down in front of your teacher. You didn't get 100%, but your neighbor got 100. No. Let's appreciate them as individuals.
All right.
When you appreciate them as individuals, they'll grow.
All right, that's incredible. As we close it down, Dr. Julius, what would be the take home? What would be your advice to the young boys out there, to the parents out there, to the society at large?
Now, one thing about, I will say this is just to across the range. I will say, let us understand our boys from 0 to 6. That is the time they probably, the woman puts a lot of input in that child, and let the woman be in the life of that child. From 6 years, if there is a father, then that child will gravitate towards a father. Let the father take time to be with that child until when he's around 14. If you're a single mother, look for a man who will be able to instill some stuff that is fatherly towards that child until when he's around 14. From 14 years onward, you have to identify mentors. Now, and that is the area where most of us are losing, because after 14, we let the boy go and we don't look for mentors. Look for men who probably have made it or they have the right character, and attach that boy to those mentors so that what they can't tell you, they can tell to those mentors. And when we begin to do that, then we'll begin to see success in our boy. But as I said before, parents, don't give up. Do the best that you can and allow God also to give you wisdom.
All right. Well, as we close it again, this one should be the last one and it should be done in about 45 seconds or so. There is a question here, but as parents, we think they are being, or most of the times parents think they are being let down when the kids take a direction that probably they are not in. Most of the teachers will tell you that they would want their kids to equally be teachers, to be doctors and lawyers. So when you see your child taking music, then you feel like you are let down. How then do we nurture these careers and do not expect much from our children as we close?
You should let them be. Do not try to become for your child. Many times we want our child to fill the gap of what we did not become. And at times we want them to live our dreams. Let them live their dream. The only thing we can do is to mentor the dream, to guide the dream, and to ensure that the dream brings them to profitability and the dream in them shines and makes a way for them.
All right, we can only say all the best to the boy child and the children at large. We all need to be actively involved, as the two doctors have told us, Dr. Julius and Dr. Kimani, relationship experts. Thank you so much for the great insights, a conversation that continues even as we all seek to make ourselves or make the home a better place for our children, and that then would automatically culminate to the rest of the world. It was good having you from the word go. Thank you so much for your feedback. We close it at that as we get to see you again tomorrow on Morning Cafe. My name is Linda Alela. Thank you.